4 or 5 years ago, I had all these personal goals in terms of how much money I wanted to make per year, all the things I wanted to do, the places I wanted to travel, the type of house I wanted to live in. And I was meeting with this guy who was an executive coach downtown Denver, and we were going through an initial discovery session of why I wanted all these things, and he was going to help me get on the right path. And then he was like, hey, wait, there's no one else in this dream or vision. Like, you're not helping anyone. Are you giving back to anyone? And I started crying. It like moved me to tears, because a lot of the things that I was doing, it was all about me. It wasn't about anyone else. And he was like, well, how can you come from a place? Because all of these things, if you have all this money and all these houses and cars, but there's no one to share it with, then what's the point?
Folks, I'm extremely excited to be here. Another incredible conversation at the podium. Today, I have my good friend, Bennie Fowler, 8-year NFL veteran, serial entrepreneur, 30 days out from making the most significant commitment of his life, getting married to his beautiful fiance. Bennie, welcome to the show.
Manuel, I appreciate you, my man, aka Manny. I appreciate you having me on the podcast, back on the Podium podcast. But it's good to be here. It's good to be in the office, to see the city of Detroit, to be back home. So super excited about this conversation.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that we agreed to do this, right? Because you're actually the first guest that I had on early when we were first rolling out these conversations that we were having with good friends, with clients, with advocates of the firm, advocates of Mass Mutual Great Lakes, advocates of Podium Risk Management. And you're the first one that I asked to come back on. And 2 things came across my mind last week when I knew you were going to be in town. One, this is your hometown.
Yes.
Hometown. I was like, man, he's going to be in his hometown. Yeah. Like, you know, blast from the past, memories about the neighborhood, the kids you hustle with, going to Detroit Country Day, ending up with Coach D'Antonio at Michigan State, an incredible NFL career. But number 2, I just always have enjoyed our conversations. And folks, it's interesting. I ask our guests the same questions prior to beginning the discussion. And just like last time when I said, hey, is there anything you're really excited about that you want to talk about today? You said, no, let's just have a great conversation. And so I've always appreciated that about you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. You know, I enjoy conversations. That's one of my strengths, is building relationships, building rapport with people. And that's what I really love to do. But yes, it feels great to be back home in Detroit, in Michigan. I could see all the memories. I can think about the pancake houses right around the corner from here. I think about Detroit Country Day. I think about that drive down Losser. And there used to be a Farmer Jack right there, where Empress Garden is one of the best Chinese food restaurants in Michigan, if not all of the world. It's right there on Losser, right next to the mobile gas station.
No shame, shout out.
No, I think about all those things. And I mean, this is who I became, you know, who yes. I am now. It started here. And, you know, shout out to my parents who created an incredible environment for me to grow up here.
Yeah, for you and your brother. Right,
brother and my 2 sisters.
Oh, and your 2 step, yeah,
2 sisters,
right.
Stepmom. So, you know, shout out to my parents. They set an incredible foundation here in this great city.
Let's. I'm not going to ask you the same 4 questions again, because we did it the first time. But let's start with being back home, and maybe a few of the basic core values that you took from your childhood that you're now applying. I mean, you've applied them in sports, but you're now applying them in the business world as a serial entrepreneur. Yeah. I mean, I've never seen a guy like within the first year of getting out of the league, having 3 to 4 like legitimate interests that he's pouring his heart and soul into. And you are. Talk to me about the core values you grabbed from your childhood that you've applied forward now in life.
Yeah, I think my parents did a really good job of setting an example. And I think about when my dad was plant manager at Wayne Assembly, and him taking my brother and I to the assembly plant on Saturdays to make sure, you know, the cars were still being built and making sure the standard was still being set at Ford. I think about that, and I think about being driven. I think about my mom leaving, you know, her practice at a major law firm and starting her own practice. That's that entrepreneurial spirit that I have. So I think being driven is one of the core values. You have to be driven. You have to be passionate about what you're doing. You don't have to have all the answers, but you do have to be passionate about what you're doing. I also think about building relationships. I think about, we talked about that before we even started the podcast. That's a huge thing for me is relationships. Relationship capital is the most important capital you'll ever have. And that's what I pride myself on. And I think that's something that I learned from my parents, but also in sports. You go to these new teams in the NFL, you go to a Michigan State, the first thing you have to do is build relationships. Before you run any plays, you have to build relationships. And that starts with trust, and that starts with building rapport and getting to know people. But that's also getting to know yourself. As you're meeting these people, how do you fit? Who are you? As you're going into these certain rooms and situations. I tell athletes all the time now is that, yes, I just got done and I just retired, but who you are, being an athlete gets you in a lot of doors, but who you are after keeps you in those doors. And that speaks to what you're saying in terms of those core values. And I think that's something that's super important. So it would be being driven. It would be relationships. It'd also be abundance. I come from a place and I come from a mindset of possibilities. What's possible in terms of these situations? So yes, I'm in 3 to 4 different things right now as I'm trying to figure out, what do I really want to be? Or where do I want to be in the next 10 to 20 years? I know who I want to be as a person, but that can look different in so many different ways. But I come from a place of possibilities. I don't see the roadblocks necessarily in any of these paths right now. That's why I'm super passionate about all of them. So I come from a place of abundance. That's a mindset. I'm very curious to see, just from yourself, the core values that you still use from your childhood today.
Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing that. I was when you spoke about the mindset of abundance, it quickly took me back to when Samantha and I first made the commitment to move to Michigan in 2017 and to serve as steward and team captain to the firm, which is now Mass Mutual Great Lakes. And I remember vividly driving across the state line for the first time with my wife and the children in the car. It was Sunday, March 19th of 2017. And I was driving, but they were driving me here to drop me off at the Westin Hotel in Southfield, Michigan. And they were going to go back and they were going to finish school. And in June, we'd be back together. And I just remember it being a very emotional moment when we saw the sign that said, "Welcome to Michigan." And through many years of therapy and just understanding myself and how I'm wired and trying to understand and appreciate my wife as a whole human, I knew that in that moment, I shouldn't try to solve what's going on. I should just ask if there's anything I could do to help her feel better, right? And so I did it, and I just remember her saying, you really better be the best version of yourself and dominate. You just better dominate.
It's a great part.
And
right there.
And our children started saying, "Oh, total Michigan domination, Dad." And that's where, people see TMD, the acronym TMD around, and that's what it is. And people would ask, what does that mean? And some of the core values that I took from my childhood, which are always having a mindset of abundance. Whether you have a lot or you have a little, be abundant in your way of thinking, because that will drive your behavior and your actions. Number 2 was the commitment to mastery and excellence in serving other human beings and adding value in their lives. And then the third is just the commitment to the hard work. Just do the work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They talk about the man who loves walking versus the man who's only obsessed about the end outcome or the destination. And who's going to experience more wins, micro wins, marginal gains along the journey. And it's going to be the person who just enjoys the journey.
Yeah.
The
prize is in the journey.
The prize is in the journey.
Yeah.
So, no, I mean, there's so much we could talk about in that space. I know that, at such a young age, you're pivoting from an already nearly decade successful career in the NFL, and you're already having to reinvent yourself, right? In a different environment, in a different arena, if you will. What are some of the tips or some of the advice that you might give to young professionals who aren't necessarily in love with what they're doing, or they are in love with what they're doing, but they know the end will come to that and they'll have to reinvent themselves? What's some of the advice or the guidance that you might give them, things for them to work on now or be mindful of now so that they're prepared for when that pivot comes?
I would say, they always had this saying in the pros, my agent, when I first was leaving Michigan State, say, "Hey, when you go into an NFL building, be a pro." when you go into any NFL organization, that's the one thing that they always talk about is be a pro. Even the last time I got cut, they said, hey, we might call you back because you're the ultimate pro. That was Kyle Shanahan and San Francisco 49ers. But to me, being the pro means a purpose, being reliable, and being optimistic. Purpose, reliable, and optimistic. Because at the end of the day, if you have a purpose behind it, yeah, you might not love it right now, but if you can find the purpose within it, you will eventually love it, or you will find the love in it. Being reliable, you have to be available, you have to be accountable. In the NFL, that's the number one saying, your best ability is your availability. If you're not available, then we can't use you. It's only 53 spots. And then being optimistic, there's going to be ups and downs in life, but that perspective that you have is super important. Are you looking at only the bad and not any good, or are you only looking at the good and not any bad? How can you have a neutral perspective? So I think that's one of the things that I would tell people is, be a pro, purpose, reliable, and optimistic. That's one of the things that you have to do. And, for the athletes out there is that, you can transfer those skills that you're using as a professional athlete into everyday life. Hard work, 100%. Discipline, all those things are the same things that I do every single day. I don't have the same workout routine, but I still have the same diet, supplement routine, because all those things were bringing mental clarity and physical energy for me every single day. So why would I leave that just because I'm not playing football anymore? So some of those things still carry over. Just as we were talking when I walked in the office today, you asked me if I wanted anything to eat. I don't eat till 1. So I don't need to, have that many calories now. So I think, as athletes are transitioning out of sports, or anybody that's in transition, is that you have to have that purpose. I think that's why I'm trying different things right now. All of them are aligned, though, in terms of my purpose to help people live and lead into their full potential.
It's interesting that you wrap up those comments. And we had another guest in earlier this morning, and he's the CEO of Henry Ford Medical Group, and the purpose is almost identical. Yeah, around helping people. Yeah, right, helping people be their best. Absolutely. And as the CEO of Henry Ford Medical Group, right, you have a narrower focus on people's health. And he's a neurosurgeon by trade, one of the most recognized ones in the country, if not the world, and that's his purpose. And that's the hospital's purpose. Yeah. And that's the 2000 researcher and physician group's purpose. Tell me more about this simplified view that you have around helping people.
Well, I had all these goals when I was maybe like 4 or 5 years ago. I had all these personal goals in terms of how much money I wanted to make per year, all the things I wanted to do, the places I wanted to travel, the type of house I wanted to live in. And I was meeting with this guy who was an executive coach downtown Denver, and we were going through an initial discovery session of why I wanted all these things, and he was going to help me get on the right path. And then he was like, hey, wait, there's no one else in this dream or vision. Like, you're not helping anyone. Are you giving back to anyone? And I started crying. It like moved me to tears, because a lot of the things that I was doing, it was all about me. It wasn't about anyone else. And he was like, well, how can you come from a place? Because all of these things, if you have all this money and all these houses and cars, but there's no one to share it with, then what's the point? And that's when my perspective started to change in terms of my purpose, because my purpose has to be bigger than myself. And when people are struggling to get out of bed in the morning, or they're struggling with different things, it's because you're always focused on you and not anyone else. And that's what led me to that. And, my purpose has changed. At first, it was to speak on stage and help people live and lead into their full potential. And he helped me come up with this moonshot goal of, okay, let me fill the Pepsi Center with my own personal live event. And it's a place not to get to, but to come from. It's a place to come from. So 30,000 people with my own personal live event. And that was getting me super excited. I went and got the same coaching degree that he got. I went and got the same certifications. And we haven't had a conversation since then. We've had like short conversations, 2-minute conversations, but we haven't had a 90-minute session like we've had since then. But just that type of conversation led to all of that. And that's why I want to help people do. It's like, what if I help you come from a place that gets you excited, not only about, what you can achieve, but what you can help other people achieve. Similar to yourself, in a situation where you're helping families,
yes,
helping people live the life that they want to, and not sacrifice in terms of like, oh, I can't do this. No,
right.
Well, let's plan from a place of abundance. Let's come up with a strategic plan financially to put you in a situation for you to win long term, not just in the next couple of years.
How long ago was that?
It was 2018.
And how did you meet him?
So I work out at a private gym in Denver, and he's a client there. And, I was telling people about, some of the plans that I have for, I wasn't done playing at this time, but, life after. And they're like, you got to meet JP. You got to meet JP. It's like, all right, let's set it up. And then, I reached out to him and went down to his place, and we had this incredible conversation, and like changed my life in terms of like, oh, wow, this is actually possible. In terms of not only, the things that I can achieve, but I can help other people achieve. But just that little bit of a conversation, super powerful questions of like, why do you really want that? And what's that going to give you? And what's that going to give you? Are important questions to ask and answer.
And so you're applying this forward in some of the coaching that you're doing now, right? You're serving and leading others. Tell us about the organization. Tell us about how you got plugged into it or started it. Share that story.
Yeah, so I got started, with the coaching journey through that conversation. I was like, okay, I want to, speak on stage, but then I also want to do this coaching and have these types of conversations with people. And that led to me, going to the certification school and see Coactive Training Institute and getting certified and getting my hours. And, when you get those hours, like those are tough conversations, especially because you're working a different muscle. Mm-hmm. Coaching is not, you're not telling, you're not advising. I'm not advising people what to do. I'm helping them and empowering them to make their own decisions. So it's a lot of questions. It's how, what's, what are you thinking about that? How's that going to make you feel? It's a different type of coaching / consulting. So that's what got me into that. And then just recently, my business partner, Dirk Dixon, of Portical. I met Dirk in October at a networking event. We had an incredible conversation. And this was the part of my business that was kind of missing. I was still playing, but this is the part of the business I was missing. I had a little bit of imposter syndrome. Like, oh yeah, I can help your business grow. But like, if this business owner had said like, okay, yeah, how are you going to do that? Like, I had it from a leadership standpoint, but not from a systems and processes to really scale a business. And that's the partnership that I needed. And, a coach of mine told me one time, one of my mini coaches told me, we're not built to do this alone. And I think that's some of the best advice I've ever gotten. And like, Dirk has been my right hand, or his right hand, whatever. But we do a lot of good things together. We work really well together, all based off of a conversation. But that also comes from that conversation with JP, and him sparking that with inside of me, helping me go out there. I go to networking events 2-3 times a week now. I don't know anybody in these rooms, but I put myself in these uncomfortable conversations because it's not about me. It's about what I can help them do and what I can help them achieve. So I don't know. It gets me super fired up. It gets me super excited. But it'd probably be similar to how you discovered your purpose, but what makes you go out and do the things that you do?
Yeah, I mean, and thanks for sharing that. I mean, that's a great question. I mean, I think from, you and I've had this discussion before that, I learned at a very early age that the ability or inability to create financial security, stability, and success for yourself, your family, the people in the community that relies on you, can significantly impact the experiences, the power of choice, and some of the outcomes, on your journey. And so for me, very early on, I just realized, if I'm not going to be a priest and help someone with their faith,
right.
I didn't enlist in the military and defend our country's freedom, which is literally one of the most selfless things I can think of in humanity. is someone who does that. That's the ultimate sacrifice. And I'm not a neurosurgeon or a fitness instructor to help someone with their physical and mental health. It's like, what more noble profession could I devote my life to than to help people understand their dreams, priorities, and fears, their relationship with money, good and bad relationships with money, and help them really architect a financial plan that allows them to hit that play button, man, on what they want, right? And I think, Dr. Kalkanis mentioned the joy and the satisfaction and the reward of being able to tell a family that you removed a tumor from that person's brain successfully, and that there's brighter days ahead, right? And so for us, when we get a message from a client who retires successfully or sends their children to college successfully, or God forbid, the ones who have passed and phoned me and said, you're literally the second person I'm phoning after the hospital, right?
Yeah.
And to be able to tell them that, this part of your life is in order. Like, we got this, right? We've worked really hard all the way to this point to make sure that everything's good. That's really, really powerful and gratifying.
It's super important that you say that, but then also every time I hear you talk about your purpose and the purpose of MassMutual and what you're doing, you smile every time. And I think that's something that I notice, because I pick up on body language, not just words, but you smile every time you say the purpose. That means you really love what you're doing. I hope that people, when they are figuring out their purpose or their why, is that they smile when they talk about it, because that means you really love what you're doing. And yes, it's work, but at the same time, it doesn't feel like work. You enjoy coming into the office. You enjoy getting on the phone and having these conversations with people, and also being there for people when they're going through a tough time.
Yeah. And I appreciate you saying that too. I mean, I think, there's something you said earlier, and you've actually said a few times when we've spoken, but I just think of the significance of being in an incredible culture, playing on an incredible team with incredible teammates, and how different that experience is, even if you are not winning. But to be on a team that has clarity and vision, clarity and purpose, clarity in what great commitment looks like to each other and to themselves. Talk about maybe some of the best teams you've played on, whether you name the team, but maybe paint a picture of what that looked and felt like to you as a teammate.
Yeah, when I hear clarity brings power. But when I think about incredible teams that I played on, I think about my first Michigan State team that won the Big Ten championship in 2010, and the way that the seniors led. Those seniors led. Kirk Cousins was the quarterback, but we had Mark Dell, B.J. Cunningham, Keyshawn Martin. Those were the receivers. It was just incredible leadership, but the culture was everything. Coach D had really built that culture. And what really speaks out is that, you can really see how good your culture is in terms of adversity. I don't think we started off 3-0, and, we beat Notre Dame on a fake field goal in overtime. And, that night, Coach D has a heart attack. How do you respond?
Yes.
We get closer. We go on to basically win every game that year. I forgot who we lost to. Oh, we lost to Iowa. We lost to Iowa at Iowa. But, Coach D goes down and he's out for a couple weeks, and it's like, how do we respond? And our team, we picked up our performance. We picked up our play. The leadership was incredible. Usually when the head coach is out, you never know how things are going to respond or how you're going to respond to adversity. And we became a tight-knit group, went on going to win the Big Ten championship or share the Big Ten championship. And we played Alabama in the bowl game. It wasn't a good bowl game, but, it was our first time and our first taste of success. And then, the culture carries over. And we go in 11-3 the next year, and we beat Georgia in the Outback Bowl.
Yeah.
We have an up and down year. And then we come back from my senior year, and it was just like, hey, this is, we had an incredible senior class that had tasted some success, but we're coming off a 7-6 year. How are we going to respond? And here we go. And only team in Big Ten history to win every Big Ten game by 10 or more points. We won every game by double digits that year, my senior year, but the culture was incredible. And it wasn't a culture in terms of the coaches telling the players what to do. It was players coaching players.
Yes.
The accountability was incredible.
Yes.
We're having tough conversations. We're having critical conversations, but we're not making people feel down. We're building people up. It's feed forward, not feedback. We were feeding forward, and it was incredible. And we were clicking on all cylinders. Ohio State they had won 24 straight. We played them in the Big Ten Championship, but I knew we weren't going to lose that game. Darquez Denard gets up and speaks right before
what?
He speaks right before. He speaks right before we're getting ready to leave for Lucas Oil. And there wasn't a dry eye in there in terms of what he said. I'll never forget the words that he said. I won't say them on camera, but
yes,
he had this incredible speech. I was like, oh, yeah, we're going to win this game. Similar to, when I was playing with the Broncos and Peyton spoke the night before, I was like, oh, yeah, we're going to win. But those cultures, it was, people loved. It was a collective mindset, not just individual mindsets, but it was a collective mindset. There was psychological safety for people to be themselves and share vulnerabilities, but pick one another up. When I got to Denver, that was a game changer in terms of like what standard was.
Share more about that.
Yeah, you're building a culture at Michigan State. Coach D did an incredible thing. Mel Tucker's doing it right now.
Oh my gosh,
building
Coach
incredible
Tucker.
Culture. When you get to the pros, though, it's totally different. We're getting paid. The attention to detail is crazy. I walked into the Broncos facility the first day, 2 Super Bowl trophies right there, right when you walk into the locker room, you see them. So the standard is already set, like, hey, this is what we're here for. And then you have Peyton Manning, who just got to Denver maybe 2 years before that. They're coming off the Super Bowl loss against Seattle. So he's pissed. The entire organization's pissed because they got embarrassed. But the standard was set. And Peyton, it's like hiring a great CEO, such as yourself. It's business. When you're in there, it is business. And Peyton was like ready to go. He was dialed in. He was getting to know people. I mean, came up to me first day, hey, Benny, happy to have you on the team. Let's get to work. And it was like, wow, like he already knows my name. Similar to Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Eli Manning, the other quarterbacks that I played with, like they take the time to get to know, especially the people who they're throwing the ball to, regardless if you're undrafted or not.
Yes.
But that standard was set, and it was a culture of performance. We are here to perform. We are here to be the best. And now when I look back at it, I think, the reason why it was is because you don't have any time to waste. You can get hurt. Not only that, you're playing in front of TV, and then Peyton was 38.
Oh yeah.
You knew his career was coming to an end. Maybe you didn't know it was going to be in the next couple of years. It could have been 4 or 5 years, whatever it may be. But it was a finite amount of time. And there was no stone left unturned. Same thing with Drew, Eli. It was the culture in the NFL. Good culture, it sticks out right away. And you can see it on the field in terms of attention to detail and how you're winning games.
Yeah, thanks for sharing those examples. Obviously, you've caught passes from some of the greatest quarterbacks that'll ever play.
Yeah,
which is such a special story and a special part of what you'll share forward. Everywhere you go. You mentioned imposter syndrome, and that really stands out to me.
Yeah,
it stands out to me because I've heard others explain it. I have people that are near and dear to my heart in business and personally who talk about it, who struggle with it. I've struggled with it. I know it through therapy. Talk to us about imposter syndrome.
Yeah, imposter syndrome, we're always trying to put on this perfect picture of who we are and, what we have or what we're doing. Like, we have it all figured out. And as I've gotten older, it's just...
You're so young.
Yes, I have. Yes, I'm young, but at the same time, a year in the NFL is like 5 to 10 years of life, depending on if the season's going good or not. So... Yes, imposter syndrome, definitely when it comes to something like, transitioning out of the NFL, you want to step into these business rooms and know that, you want them to know like, all right, yes, I'm a polished person. But I think I've actually gotten more business by just being completely honest. Like, hey, I don't know the answer to that, but I will figure it out, or I have no problem figuring it out. Or, hey, I have people who are on my team who can figure that out. But I just saw a podcast with Shaq the other day talking about the things that he kind of regrets throughout his career, and certain things about certain relationships that he had. But he talked about, you try to act like you have it all figured out, but we don't.
Yes.
And that's okay.
Yes.
But there are some things that we're really good at, and be confident in those things.
Yes.
But the things that you're not, feel free to share. People, that's how you build the rapport right there. That's how I build the best rapport, is like sharing some of my failures. I don't want to hear about everybody's success. I want to hear about, some of the things that we might have in common.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you said that, because there's so many people out there today being, I think, more authentic about the adversity that they've faced, the adversities they've overcome, the ones they gave into, and the fact that it really is about failing forward, right? Accepting the fact that the greatest outcomes will typically follow many micro defeats.
100%.
Right? Share maybe one of the sort of moments or achievements or moments of recognition that are really meaningful to you. That's really meaningful to you, that is something that has a special place in your heart, and tell us why.
The one thing that comes to mind right now in terms of meaningful moments of significance to me would be my fiance saying yes to marrying me, because she could easily said no, but.
And I loved reading the story on the wedding website.
Yeah,
I did love reading that story.
So that's a significant moment right there, her saying yes.
So thanks, Amanda, for saying yes.
Yes, shout out to my soon-to-be wife.
No doubt.
What else sticks out when it comes to that would be playing at Ford Field. So there's 3 moments at Ford Field. My last high school game, state championship, we didn't win. But it's an incredible moment to take, somebody who didn't play freshman or sophomore football.
Yeah, I don't think most people know that about you, right?
Didn't play freshman.
What was your sport?
Basketball. Still is. Freshman or sophomore football, didn't play. We go to the state championship my junior year. I scored the game-winning touchdown in the semifinals to take us to the state championship. The following year, it's like, okay, but we had the number 1 running back in the state, number 1 linebacker in the state, going to Notre Dame and then going to Michigan. So it's like, okay, can I repeat that and take this team back? And with the help of my friends, shout out to Chris Jackson, Mose, O'Neal Swanson, Josh Harris, Al Harris, we go back to the state championship. That was a significant moment. Also at Ford Field. Playing Florida Atlantic at Michigan State, my redshirt freshman year, I have my first catch in college. Another significant moment. Sunday night football, my second year in the NFL, back at Detroit, 60 people at the game, have my first NFL catch. Significant moment, though, because they give me a chance the Broncos give me a chance, like, hey, you're going to play tomorrow, you're back at home, I'm going to give you some, it's the first time playing offense.
Oh, my goodness.
Go into the huddle, and we usually rather play for Demaryius Thomas. It's called Alley to X. So we're getting ready to call this play. Rest in peace to my really good friend,
no
Demaryius.
Yes.
I think Peyton called the play wrong, though. He called Alley to F. I was the F. Called Alley to F. And he's like, I think that's to you. I was like, yeah, it is to me. So it's like I'm super nervous. Call the play. He throws me the ball. First down. Sunday night football. I have my first catch in the NFL at Ford Field in front of my family. 4 catches for 50 yards in my first real offensive action. But then, fast forward to another significant moment in the Super Bowl where, Peyton calls the play and he says, hey, give me a chance to get the laces. I'm throwing the ball to you. Like that, in that window right there.
Yes.
From the 3rd game of the season to now the Super Bowl. Now he's like, hey, I'm throwing it to you, instead of like, hey, did I just call the right play? Are you sure? So I would think those are the moments that stick out right there.
What? Oh my gosh, that has to be so special.
Yeah, it's incredible. I can remember, I can see it in my head right now in terms of the huddle of like,
oh man,
Sunday night football. This is every kid's dream, and I'm doing it at home in front of my family.
Do you ever see yourself coaching?
Absolutely not. Kids, yes. Like I do it on Sundays back in Denver, helping kids understand the technique of the game. But in terms of like going in every day and going through plays, and no, I'm good.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that though. So I have to tell the story about Atlas asking us that when you spend the night tonight, if he sleeps in the same room as you, if he's all of a sudden going to have your hand skills.
Yeah, he's already got the skills within him. That's the one thing, is that don't try to be like anybody else. He's already got the skills, but that's hilarious.
Yeah, we need you to put in a good word with Coach Bunkowski. So when he's in 7th grade next year, he may get a couple catches.
Absolutely.
Coach B, that's a shout out to you. So Alex, make sure Coach B gets that.
Yeah.
Talk to me about, you've always struck me as somebody, not that you have your entire life planned out or architected, but you just strike me as someone who's going on this journey very intentionally.
Yeah. With
drive, with confidence, with the mindset of abundance, with a rising tide lifts all boats mentality. Where is Bennie Fowler going in the next 10 years?
I don't have that type of plan, but I know it'll be big. Mm-hmm. I know it'll be with people I love. Mm-hmm. I know those things for sure. I know I'm strategic in terms of the people who I hang out with, the people I surround myself with, the people I will say yes to, the people I will move for. Mm-hmm. So I'm super intentional about that. Now, I don't know exactly where I'll be in 10 years, but I know I'll be with my fiance, wife, number one. I know that, I'll be intentional about, my health, my lifestyle, but also, the relationships that I've built with you, my brother, my sisters, my family. I'm intentional about that. My good friends, the Draymond Greens of the world, the Morrell Evans of the world, people that I hang out with and I'm super close with. My friends in Denver, like Rhett Trees, like incredible mentor of mine that I spend a lot of time with, who I've gotten to know. Yourself, like these are people like that I'll pick up and move for anytime. Like I have a new locker room. It's different. They're in different places, but I'm super intentional about those type of people. The Rob Andrews of the world, Keith Roberts. These are people in Denver that I spend a lot of time with that are coming into my mind. Kenji Steer, Ryan Harris. Like these are like my new receivers, quarterbacks, but these are the people that I know intentionally I will be doing business with.
What is the decision making process that you go through? You and I met a few years back. You saw the work we were doing with Podium nationally in serving athletes, entertainers, business owners, and CEOs around financial planning matters. When you and I agreed that, hey, this is a 1 + 1 = 7 mathematical equation for us to work together. What was the decision making process that you went through to say, hey, this is an organization that I'd love to be a part of, and I think I could have a big impact on?
The way you speak about Samantha, Ava, and Atlas. It was easy after that.
Yeah.
You care about your family.
Thanks for saying that.
Yeah. I didn't, the mission of Podium is super important because I have been in that situation and what we're going to do in terms of strategically helping business owners, athletes, celebrities be better off and erase the statistic of, athletes going broke or celebrities and things like that. That's super important. But who you are every single day, I have to be able to work with you every single day. I don't mind picking up the phone with you. Or getting on the phone with you, or being at your, being with your family, or hey, Benny, I need you to do this. Like, if I have to dread getting on the phone with you, then trust me, we're not doing. I won't even think about it.
Yeah.
And it's easy for me. I don't know if that comes from my parents, but I don't have to consciously think about that. I have a good intuition about the people I hang out with. And you've met some of my friends, and some of my people.
Yes.
You wouldn't have to question them being around your family. And that's the whole point.
Yeah, I still think, just as a quick comment on that, I still think back to when we went to the game together and Golden State was in town and you were saying hi to Draymond and Atlas was just standing there like starstruck. And Draymond just came over and signed his T-shirt because he was wearing his Michigan State T-shirt, and I was like, it's not like that. Mm-hmm. It's not really like that, as you know, and I've been around professional sports for a long time. It's a blessing and a privilege to kind of be in that environment. because what child does not grow up thinking, oh my gosh, someday I want to play in one of these leagues, right? But it does say a lot about how you've navigated life, auditing your circles and being intentional about who is in your life.
Absolutely.
Because I just saw that in how Draymond interacted with Atlas.
Yeah, absolutely. It's everything. But I would say that comes from my parents.
Yeah.
My parents, it doesn't matter what type of money you have. That doesn't matter. Who you are as a person will speak more. I think I saw LeBron say that the other day. It's like, the world's super small. Don't be an asshole. You said that.
Yeah, we say it all the time, right?
You've said that as well, but
always.
I saw LeBron say that on the shop the other day, and it's like, man, the world is super small, and I want, if people bring my name up, like, I don't want it to ever be like, oh, he's a horrible person.
Yeah.
And, I think that's important. Reputation is everything.
As we get ready to wrap up for today, what is a few quick pieces of advice that you would give young professionals as they're out there seeking out mentors? Every single guest we have on talks about the power and the impact that great mentors have had on in their life. I think many times I see that young professionals, they just don't know how to confidently ask for time, for an opportunity to say hello, for an opportunity to get to know you. What's the advice that you would give? You've had incredible mentors throughout your entire life, going all the way back to your parents, your brother Chris, et cetera. But like the coaches you've played for, what's advice you would give people on how to find a great mentor?
You have to just go out there and ask. I mean, there is no blueprint, or you have to ask. The mentors that I had in the NFL, you can ask. Emmanuel Sanders, I reached out to Demaryius Thomas right away. Yeah. I shared the stage with Rod Smith yesterday. Rod Smith still has the records for Broncos undrafted in terms of catches and yards. I think he might be even the leading receiver in Broncos history in terms of yards.
Wow.
But like when I was an undrafted free agent, he was the first person I reached out to in Denver. I would get with him every offseason. Didn't know him at all. But I know I would have a regret if I didn't reach out and ask.
Yes.
So Emmanuel Sanders, somebody I reached out to. All the people in business that I have now are mentors of mine. Those are people that I reached out to during the pandemic.
Yes.
Rhett Trees is somebody who's become an incredible friend, and he's doing incredible things. He's got an incredible family office in terms of what he's doing. But I reached out to him randomly on LinkedIn because I was getting to know all the CEOs in Denver. If I didn't do that, I don't know. Who knows? All these people, a lot of these relationships that I have, I think about Garrett Clemens. He's in the oil and gas industry in Denver. I reached out to him during the pandemic on LinkedIn. A lot of the relationships that I have in Denver is actually super funny, is that I was just reaching out to people on LinkedIn during the pandemic. We were all locked in, so I was just having Zoom meetings and meeting these people and seeing. So you got to ask to get.
And it's so funny that you say it, and we'll wrap up here, but I think back to when I moved to Michigan, and it was the first time I'd ever been in Detroit my entire life, and I'm 39 years old, and I'm like, I'm going to Michigan. I'm gonna serve and lead, and be a good steward of this firm, and in a market that I didn't know at all. And I just remember I started just cold calling CEOs and people who ran organizations that I thought, wow, I could learn a lot from that person about how to be relevant and add value in this market.
Yeah.
And I just always think about when people say you will miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Right. And how true that is and how quickly we ignore it.
Yeah. It's hard though. I know we're getting ready to wrap up, but yes, you will miss 100% of the shots you don't take. But the quote is something, the action is something else. But you have to do it with somebody else. Like, challenge yourself for, like, I have a mastermind group of my friends, Ty Clark, AJ Troop, John Jakubik, Anthony Fields. Like, that's a mastermind that I created because, yeah, some of this stuff is scary. But if I have my friends to challenge me, then I'm better off. Now I know I'm not doing it by myself for that imposter syndrome, or like, why should I really do this? Or this person doesn't want to talk to me. Yes. Those things, you get those things out of your head by having people around you to like, no, you should do it. Do it today. And then let's follow up. And then how did it go? Instead of like, you're going back and forth in your mind and you're just like, nah, I'm not going to do it.
Last piece of advice for people listening today, something you've learned along the way. Maybe you did it well, maybe you didn't, but something you're taking forward with you.
I always go back to this quote: "Is the biggest room in the world is room for improvement." I always say that. It's something that I just live by, and it's something that I love to just share. Is that we can always improve. But now I would say relationship capital, is the most important capital that you will have.
Hey, I'm going to shout out to my boy Steve Orozco in Connecticut. I love it when he says we got to be humble savages.
Yeah.
And I don't know why every time he says that, I think of you.
Yeah. Humble savage.
Be a humble savage. Be a humble savage. So Steve, quick shout out to you from my boy Bennie Fowler and I. Bennie, it was awesome having you again. I'm so glad that you're home.
Appreciate you.
I'm glad we're together the next couple of days, and thanks for making time.
Thank you. I appreciate it.